CKLW. A tribute continues. Part 3, 2020 and number 1.
Radio 8, CKLW.
As the red sweeps second hand of the oversized studio clock pushes the large black hand closer and closer to 20 minutes after the hour, a young, long-haired announcer, one of a staff of 23, enters a darkened, small broadcast booth and seats himself at a table lit only by a gooseneck light shining on the sheaf of papers he's placed on the table before him. He adjusts his headphones, hearing the pop music droning through his head as he concentrates on his lead story. He clears his throat. He clears his throat again. As the music ends, the flip of a finger opens a microphone and turns on 2 control lights within the studio.
20 minutes before the hour, this is Byron McGregor, CKLW 2020 News for First Federal Savings of Detroit. The widow of automotive pioneer Horace Dodge is dead. This is Anna Thompson Dodge, died last night in her suburban Grosse Pointe Farms home of natural causes. It's believed she was 103 years old. Her estate is estimated at more than $100 million, and funeral arrangements are not complete yet. In other Wednesday morning news, another Peruvian disaster. Thousands of tons of water have crashed down a mountainside, flooding 2 towns. It's believed 17,000 are dead. U.S. B-52 bombers have clobbered communist positions near an embattled South Vietnamese base camp. A Cambodian driver who escaped from communist captors has accounted for 5 of 8 missing network newsmen captured by the communists on Sunday. 2 children have been killed and 10 others injured early this morning in an Arab rocket attack along the Jordanian border. And a wildcat walkout by 1,800 Teamsters continues to prevent deliveries to 3 Detroit area supermarkets today. CKLW Windsor News Time 9:44.
4 and three quarters.
Just a minute now. Let's end the confusion about interest on savings accounts. First Federal Savings of Detroit.
CKLW Sports. Baseball is pretty shaken up by the latest expose-type book to come out about the sport. This one is written by Houston pitcher Jim Bouton. He tells a whole raft of tales out of school. The Tiger management is peeved by an excerpt charging that baseball players are often given pep pills by their trainers, and Bouton charges the situation is worst in Detroit. Tiger trainer Bill Bem calls it so much guff and says he's never handed a player a pep pill. Bowie Kuhn met with Bouton yesterday and handed out a warning that the pitcher stick to pitching and forget about writing in the future. Jim Fregosi knocked out a sacrifice fly in the 10th to break a 2-2 tie and run the Angels to a 3-2 win over the Tigers. The loss puts Detroit in 4th place, 11 games behind Baltimore. Joe Niekro gets charged for the loss. Willie Horton drove in both Detroit runs. Tonight, Mayo's sending Mickey Lolich out in a bid to put the Skids on a 3-game losing streak. In the other Major League action, the Orioles down the Athletics 5-1. The Indians took both games from the Brewers 4-1 and then 9-5. The Yanks hit the Royals 3-2. The Bo Sox hit the Twins 5-1. The Padres outslugged the Pirates 14-8. The Brewers managed the Mets 4-1. The Reds hit the Phillies 7-2. Houston 6, Montreal 4. The Cards clobbered the Giants 12-1. And that Chicago-Los Angeles game was rained out. Eddie McClain says he's working out every day, except when it rains. He flatly denies the reports that he's more concerned with his golf game than his pitching performance. 4 of the big names in golf may head for England and the British Open Golf Tournament instead of heading for the upcoming Canadian Open. The undecided pros include Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, and Billy Casper. A grand jury will now take over the investigation into the death of Terry Sawchuk. There's a possibility of a manslaughter finding. And the Detroit Pistons have signed the all-time scoring leader at Tulane. He's 6'4", John Arthurs. For First Federal Savings of Detroit, CKLW. First in the Motor City with 2020 News.
Rivet the listener to his radio and punch him with the news. At CKLW, the 2020 news came so fast, so hard, you had to listen.
This is Grant Hudson, CKLW 2020 News. And there he was, the big, burly, hard steel hauling man sitting in the cab of his rig on Van Dyke and Lance, crying.
The light had turned green for the little boy to cross the street, and as soon as it turned green, he jumped out into the street, and that the steel truck was coming pretty fast with the load of steel behind him and couldn't stop. And it came through the light and hit the little boy and knocked him about 15 to 20 feet, and then hit him again, and 8 wheels of the truck ran over him. And crushed him pretty bad. And the truck driver sitting behind the wheel of the truck now crying pretty bad.
Fred B. Marshall of Niles has a brand new bank account bulging with the $200,000 he won at today's Michigan Lottery Super Draw. This week's lucky lottery numbers are 5, 9, 5, and 460. Either set of digits on your ticket is worth $25. Should you be fortunate enough to have 5, 9, 5, and 460 on your ticket, you're in line for next week's Super Draw and a shot at $200,000. Those winning numbers of 5, 9, 5, and 460 are heard exclusively every week on the Big 8. Lee Marshall, 2020 News. A stiff carcass has been pulled from a car along I-75 in Lincoln Park.
Well, the Michigan State Police Crime Laboratory technicians are here. We're beginning to process the car for trace evidence and see if we can come up with an identification.
That Lincoln Park policeman says passers-by located the automobile near the London overpass. The Big 8 put wise to that one by a call on the confidential hotlines. When you see a happening under your nose, tell us at 254 CKLW in Windsor, 961 NEWS in Detroit. We offer a weekly cash award and pay $1,000 each year for the year's biggest story.
CKLW had its share of critics in the news media. The station was often accused of blowing a news story out of proportion by delivery alone.
A gang out fishing this afternoon pulled up something they weren't planning on for dinner.
The kids were fishing in the canal over there, and they spotted something wrapped in a blanket. And it wasn't the first time this thing was spotted. Before a day or so ago, one of the kids mentioned it. But this time it came up to the surface, I guess, and one of the kids got his hook caught in it.
It turned out to be a rotting body. Eyewitness Charles Evans tells the 2020 hotlines that stiff sank to the bottom then. That's when police were called in. The worm-baited hook belonging to Victoria Finley, who tells what that floater looked like.
She was black, she had short hair, and she had a rag tied around her neck, and she had crook tied around her legs, and her hands was tied up.
That thrilling catch pulled from the water along Harding between Jefferson and the canal. Wayne County Sheriff Bill Lucas having a stiff of his own to worry about. That body located south of Ecorns in Van Buren Township. The man shot in the head right through the blanket he was wrapped in.
His body was found in an open field. The Wayne County Sheriff's detectives are currently investigating to try to identify him. It's interesting that in his pocket at the time was found a police-type badge, which he apparently used to identify himself.
Grim Reaper's sharpened side striking in Trenton today, and an unidentified boy about 3 or 4 years old felled by flying hot lead on a target range. That young life snuffed out when he rounded a hill and caught a bullet in the head. Hotline News, you know.
If a man was burned, the copy might read, "Burned to a crisp was," or a three-person shotgun might appear on CKLW as "Bodies Rolling Out of a Home." In 1971, when Detroit topped its all-time murder rate, the Roget's thesaurus came up with assassinated, butchered, bloodbath.
CKLW 2020 News. The hitless Tigers could use this guy's talents. Mount Clemens police have a 36-year-old man in custody. Seems he got home about 5 o'clock this morning from an all-night spree. That ticked off the little lady who unleashed a verbal barrage at the man. That apparently the last straw for him. He picked up his genuine Willie Mays Powerized Lightning Strike Louisville Slugger baseball bat. Proceeded to hit 1,000 on the woman's head. She's dead. He then turned on the children. They're in serious condition. Rape on the 7th floor of the City County building in Detroit, and you're hearing it first on the Big 8.
The secretary from the mayor's office boarded the elevator on the 11th floor. One man already on. He pulled a knife, took her to room 724, and raped her. Screams were heard all over. Officers on the 11th went down to check, couldn't find the room, and by the time they did, the sex deviant was gone. The helpless secretary just lying on the floor. She's in good condition but shaken. Elevators don't stop on the 7th floor now, and security inside the building has been beefed up considerably. Rainbow Carlisle, 2020 News.
As the blood flowed, CKLW was criticized for making each story seemingly grislier. But CKLW was not deterred. Or, as then newsman Grant Hudson, who today is program director at WNOE New Orleans, put it, Why mess around when you're number one?
This is Lee Marshall, CKLW 2020 News. An unidentified young boy was riding his bike on Van Dyke near Lance this afternoon when a steel truck collided with that boy, knocking him about 20 feet. Eyewitness James Mays was there. He called the law, then called the Big 8 to say it was enough to make you sick.
Well, they just moved the steel truck off of part of the body, and they were using shovels to put part of the smashed parts in plastic bags. And they put what was left of him on a stretcher and loaded it back to one of the emergency units. And they have just pulled a steel truck off so they could get the rest of it. And he's squashed beyond recognition. You can't tell it's a little boy even hardly. And they just put him in the truck and getting ready to take him away.
Meanwhile, a body was discovered in a car on I-75 near the London overpass in Lincoln Park. The car was registered to a Detroit owner, but the corpse was discovered without any identification. An eyewitness was the Big 8 with word that the body was found with a bullet in the back of the head. We asked Lieutenant Robert Heyer of Lincoln Park Police if there's any truth to that story.
Yes, we do have a bullet wound of the head, and how many wounds we don't know as yet until we can get them out here and really examine them closely.
When you see it happen, the Big 8 once...
And CKLW was number one. The newsman during the broadcast often would exit the booth to a round of applause from his colleagues, all secure in the knowledge that more people were tuned into CKLW than any other station in the market. And CKLW's 2020 newscasts, called that because they were broadcast 20 minutes after and before the hour, thus allowing CKLW to successfully compete with stations programming news on the hour and half hour, became famous within the industry. Today, they are broadcast history.
It's 20 minutes before 1. This is Lee Marshall, CKLW 2020 News. 5 Pontiac High School students were gunned down in cold blood this afternoon. Pontiac Police Chief William K. Hanger telling 2020 News.
We have a suspect in custody, but at this point we're not at all convinced that he's irresponsible. We're right in the stage of where we've got a number of people up to the high school interviewing witnesses and at the hospitals interviewing the victims, and we really, haven't gotten conclusive information yet.
First word of that shooting came on the 24-hour confidential news lines. When you see it happen, buzz the Big 8 at 254-CKLW Windsor or 961-NEWS in Detroit. We're offering a weekly cash award plus $1,000 annually for the year's best tip. James McNeely, Michigan's Democratic Party chairman, is about the business of contacting party leaders throughout the states in a drive to re-elect Larry O'Brien as National Party chairman. Michigan's Democratic honcho said there's no doubt in his mind that Mrs. Jean Westwood will resign as national chairperson. Mrs. Westwood came under fire of late for her close ties with Senator George McGovern. Irma Henderson took the oath of office today, giving Detroit its 9th common councilman. Mrs. Henderson says she's thankful for the fair sex vote.
I could not possibly begin to name you, but oh, you women. You women. In the days ahead, I am certainly counting on you to continue to extend yourselves in this great effort to express our program of hope, faith, and trust in our city.
President Nixon will be knocking heads for the 3rd time in 3 days with Henry Kissinger at President's Camp David hideaway. One topic of conversation is sure to be the president's upcoming meeting with a personal envoy from South Vietnamese President Thieu. DSR head people met today to try to find a way out of their current financial mess. One of the deciding ways was to make a few cutbacks, but DSR Chairman John Wilder says the cuts aren't as bad as they may seem.
Well, I think the service cuts are much less drastic than was originally proposed, and certainly it's going to be felt in some circles, particularly the night ridership. But some of these economies were long overdue.
An arsonist's torch has forced East Detroit Senior High to close for the day. That fire totally destroyed the school's library and all its contents. Superintendent Mike Emlaw says that not all was charred by the felonious fire.
There has been some minor damage to the classrooms located immediately above the library, in that electricity is out in that area, and consequently there is no heat and light. This is part of a 3-story structure,
so we are lacking a considerable number of the classrooms which we normally use during the day.
3 Army officers paid a call on Lieutenant William Colley this morning to hear his appeal for clemency in his 20-year Huskow hitch for the murdering of 22 civilians at the now famous My Lai massacre. For the past 20 months, Colley has been living at Fort Benning, Georgia, under house arrest. State Lottery Commissioner Gus Harrison says Michigan sold close to 6 million lottery tickets during the first week of the new lottery. Harrison tells 2020 News revenues totaling $2,949,000 have been dumped into the state's coffers as a result. Prize money earmarked for distribution from the first week of sales, $1,327,000. Something else that's not really news. The lottery director says 65% of the tickets sold in the first week were purchased in the Detroit metropolitan area. Grant Hudson, 2020 News. The long, drawn-out trial of Canada's biggest bank robbery continues today.
5 co-defendants in a $1.2 million Royal Bank robbery trial are hearing about the good sides of their characters today as the defense continues its presentation. The Crown attorneys took 5 weeks to present the prosecution's view of the case, and the defense started its work in the middle of last week, calling 14 witnesses and 1 defendant to testify. It took the prosecution 5 weeks to make its case, and the defense is expected to take about as much time in trying to shoot it down. Neil Thomas, 2020 News.
A newspaper in New York has been carrying a story saying that Martin Bormann, Adolf Hitler's hitman, has been living in Latin America since the end of the war.
Adolf Hitler's deputy, Martin Bormann, was seen just a few weeks ago in Argentina, according to a copyrighted article in the New York Daily News, which says Bormann was nearly arrested by an Argentine Secret Service agent on October 5th. By the time the agent messaged for permission to make the arrest, Bormann had vanished. The news says Bormann was sheltered by former President Juan Perón after World War II and invested a fortune smuggled out of Germany so shrewdly that he is still a major factor in the Latin American economy.
The Pontiac division of General Motors today cranked out their 16 millionth car. Beginning in 1926, when the first Pontiac rolled off the assembly line, it took 10 years to make the first million buggies. That's a far cry from the latest million, which took them only 16 months to produce. CKLW News Time, 1244.
CKLW in-depth report. If Tom Rush doesn't make it in music pretty soon, he's going to call it quits and return to his second love, getting high.
Well, actually, what I like to fly is I love gliders more than power planes, because there's no earthly use for them, really.
What is the feeling like?
You got to go and do it. It's not like what you would expect. It's like being in a sailboat, but up in the sky instead of out in the ocean.
Despite the performer's creativeness, he just couldn't cut it with the music-buying public.
Are you going through a change in your style?
Well, I don't know. I personally think that, anybody that's an artist is constantly going through a change. So if you keep doing the same thing, and you're a record player. So, yes, I think this record is different from the one before it, but I expect the next one will be different too.
CKLW in-depth report.
Just ahead of much more music and Jack Anthony. Cloudy with occasional snow today, tonight, and tomorrow. High 35, low 28, Merck Index 47, light air pollution. The current temperature 34 degrees. Sarnia 33, Cleveland 36, Toledo 35. This is Lee Marshall, 2020 News.
CKLW.
All was not blood and guts, though, and there were some good times behind the scenes. Dick Smythe.
But you talked about jokes. There was a little gag that I don't know how it got started, but we invented the name George Trumbull. And suddenly George Trumbull started turning up on memos, because we're getting these memos at these times with covering copies to Sam Slate and Lord knows who else, and people we had never heard of. So we started surreptitiously on company memos, adding CC to George Trumbull. And then sometimes when one of the radio guys would work duty in the television booth, we'd sneak his name in. We had such and such a movie on starring Clark Gable and Lana Turner and George Trumbull. And he'd turn up again. As we know, it's the old days, we used to broadcast some of these old thesaurus transcription programs, Music of Manhattan and so forth. And very often, if you turned on CKLW, you'd hear, now the Music of Manhattan featuring George Trumbull and his orchestra. And this went on for a number of years and got to be quite a running gag, both on and off the air. And if you'll recall, George Romney, who was president of American Motors, decided to seek the governorship of the state of Michigan, and it was quite a news story at the time. The whole George Trumbull gag died. I got a phone call one day, and it said, "Hello, this is George Trumbull, Mr. Romney's press secretary." Well, it turns out that there really was a George. I thought it was a gag, of course, at the time, but it turns out that there really was a George Trumbull, and he indeed was his press secretary. And when Romney got elected, he went on to become the governor's press secretary. They were happy years down in Windsor. It's an interesting sort of relationship working in Canada, yet, and being a Canadian, yet really being a major force in the American market, as we were, operating in a radio station that had 2 offices because we kept quarters up at 3300 in the Guardian building. They've subsequently, I believe, moved out to the suburbs. Also, the Windsor plant has moved up Willette Avenue. The radio station we worked in those days is the current television station, which has been taken over by the CBC at 825 Riverside Drive West. But in those days, it was all one plant. We worked together, and there was even quite a bit of combo stuff. A radio announcer would do booth duty, and occasionally a television guy would do some radio, and so forth. I guess the biggest event in my life, my career at CKLW, was coverage of the Detroit riot. We ended up winning the RKNDA International Award, the first time that a Canadian station had ever won it. It was just pure hell, but also pure ecstasy for a full week as we covered all the events of that time. We had some awfully good news people in those days. There was Don Patrick, who I think is over at WWJ now, at least last I heard he was. There was Jim Brooker, who was, I believe, in an executive position at WWJ. Bert Allen, who's still with CKLW. Ivan Karniski, I don't remember where Ivan has gone. Don Daly, who last I heard was still associated with the television station. But we put in a very, very frantic week. But the interesting thing, and I think the thing I learned from that experience, was that if you want to build morale in a news department, cover a story like that, live a story like that for a week. And the morale in that radio station for many, many, many months after the coverage of the Detroit riot and after having won that award was such that we could have beaten the world. It was just a superb environment all around.
It's 20 before 6, 82 degrees. Windy today, cooler tomorrow. CKLW 2020 News. Glacial trouble continues on Detroit's near west side. The National Guard has been alerted.
Mayor Kavanaugh says he has contacted Governor Romney's office and asked for National Guard assistance. Under a predetermined plan, the mayor says the Guard will assemble at the Light Guard Armory on 8 Mile and be marshaled into the area. Kavanaugh says a police sweep of the area this afternoon was unsuccessful.
At this moment, they're being marshaled in the area. We expect that they'll be on the streets, but they'll be working with our police department and be under the general command of our police agents, of our police department here.
At Recorder's Court, Judge Donald Leonard is standing by to handle arraignments of those arrested. The mayor says all those arrested are from the area. The prosecutor has asked that high bonds be set. Jim Brooker, CKLW 2020 News.
CKLW News photographer Don Grant is on the scene and offers this ear witness report on what he has seen.
The area of 12th and Claremont, the fire there is nearly under control. 2 more fires have been started south of that area, and there's one on 14th, a couple of blocks off of Grand Boulevard. Looting is going on between the police lines. They're smashing windows and pulling down the grills and taking things, and you can hardly see them in the smoke. The police can only cover so much at one time, so they're able to sneak in between and around behind the police.
Rioting has spread now to another area on Detroit's near east side. There was one young man who witnessed a great deal of looting in the Oakland area. He tells us what he saw.
After they broke out the window, people start coming around. They start taking clothes by the bundle. They got in cars with clothes, running down the street with clothes.
A tornado watch is on for most of southern
CKLW was indeed #1, thanks to its newscasts, now industry famous, thanks to its music programming, and thanks to some of the finest talents that ever graced a broadcast mic. Mike Marshall.
I think the first book that came in after we went on the midday thing was The Hooper, and I had about a 22.5 share and was #1. That, I thought, well, that's a freak. Then the Pulse came in about a week later, and it confirmed, and then we got the ARB, and all 3 were solid #1, and we'd taken care of the telephone talk show on WWJ, and I was flying high. I was ready to stay for the rest of my life.
But a change was continuing on the radio dial. Folks were continuing to discover FM.
Oh, wow. That's not so bad, though. I mean, don't look at me as if I'm some kind of a fool because I don't know what 17 is, because I know a lot of people out there who are 17, and they don't know what it is either.
Listeners had discovered FM, but not advertisers.
Well, Detroit's own superstar Ted Lucas there, and a song of his called Head in California, a multiple recording that he did that has 3 or 4 guitar parts and bass part, and he did all the vocals himself, did everything on there except the drums. And, well, he's negotiating with various record magnates to secure a commercial release of that, which I'm sure will turn into a big hit for him.
A brief parade of PDs followed the directorship of Alden Deal, beginning with Bill Hennis, through Les Garland, and before the 70s ended, Dick Bosey. Each in their own way changed the sound of CKLW. Bill Hennis played down the Motown sound, relying more heavily on more rock and album pop cuts.
Through Indiana, through Pennsylvania, through New York, through Connecticut, and things like that. But let me tell you something. Once again, I'm what you'd call your basic star. I am a radio star, and I don't try to take it seriously. I'm in demand by a number of people for, well, folks, I'm just trying to make up which offer I should take. The one for 35, the one for 60, or the one for 75 out in Los Angeles. I'm trying to make up my mind whether I should take the offer for climate or for money, if you know what I mean. I'm confused. I need your help. Why don't you give me a call at 966-2800 for Windsor or 298-8822 for Detroit. I'm going to blow it here. They're going to blow me out tonight. That's all there is to it. But despite the fact that they'll blow me out, I'm still going to keep format. It's 308 with Chuck McKay at CKLW. CKLW. You better make up your mind. Are you going to can me or not? Am I going to make a lot of money for this radio station or what? Let's quit. Don't screw around. Make up your mind. CKLW 324. Chuck McKay, the guy with the deep voice who plays more music. And Jethro Tull, the guy with the thin lips who plays a good flute. CKLW 327 with Chuck McKay, and it's a pleasure to be here in the Motor City playing the great songs of the past 10, 15, 20 years for you. CKLW letting you savor your favorite flavors all this weekend. 3:30 with Chuck McKay, the boy with the big boy voice, at the Big 8. CKLW 335. I am a star, but not a very big listener, simply because I'm humble. 966-2800 and 298-8822 if you want to hear a hit. Give me a call. CKLW 338, Chuck McKay. And let me be serious for a moment. The only reason, folks, hey, let me tell you something. I used to be known as Chuck Williams back here, but I made such a let me tell you, maybe I better not. I made such a bad name for myself in Detroit because I used to cut up so much with Byron McGregor that they threw me out of town. And that's the honest-to-God truth. They threw me out. I mean, boom. I only landed at a bigger station, WLS in Chicago, and I told them to buzz off. And I know that you're not used to this on this radio station, but I'm here for ratings, and if you can't dig ratings, well, buzz off. Anyway, it's sure good to be back, and I'm here on my mother's advice, and if they can me here, just remember that I only came here because my mother told me to do so. I mind my mother, and let me tell you, kids, mind your mother. And if the Big 8 blows me out, well,
At least I have my mother. No bread, just my mother. I'm sorry, folks. I'm what you call your personality. Let's cut the rock and roll, hocus pocus. And let's get into a spot before I get canned before 4 o'clock.
Biggie, buy a Karma. Peter Paul's got something for everyone. They've got different bites for different likes.
Well, then bite it. Bauer House not marketed in Canada, gang. Get your Peter Paul candy at your local Farmer Jack store for a full selection of Peter Paul candies. Peter Paul candies are great. They really are. For snacks for the whole family. So, dig, Mr. Allen. Go to Farmer Jack for your favorite Peter Paul candy.
Tom Rivers replaced Steve Doe in 1971. He left for Chum by 1972, and today currently does morning drive at the Toronto Powerhouse. But in 1971...
Ladies and gentlemen, the beat goes on.
CKLW Motor City.
2:00 at the Big 8. Big Tom Rivers is here. It's 1 o'clock in Detroit. Are you ready to get down to it? I thought so, baby. Here's Rare Earth. If you want to celebrate a Saturday night, you stick around.
I just want to celebrate another day of life with my favorite more music. CKLW.
The Big 8 is not going to stop now. 2:03 CKLW Daylight Time. This is Big Tom Rivers. I'm not playing your favorite song on a Saturday night, and you let me know about it. Windsor, get 258-6666. Detroit, 298-8822. Who? Solid Gold and the Magic Butt.
Every day I get you.
Talk about a powerhouse group, baby. 1968, Solid Gold on CKLW for the Who at 2:06 Daylight Time with Big Tom Rivers.
CKLW. We're so sorry, Uncle Albert.
If you think that's a lot of bull, you're right. From Bull Halsey, along with Uncle Albert, Paul, and Linda McCartney in Song 3 of the CKLW Big 30 at 2:12 Daylight Time with Tom Rivers. The deal-writing boys at Harry May Chevrolet say, why pay more and settle for less? Cash in on a Deal Writers demo sale. 20 demos and official cars on display now at Harry May's showroom. All price to sell. Deal now for a 71 Impala 4-door, $37.88. A 71 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, $68.88. Or a 71 Malibu Super Coupe, $34.34. How about a 71 Monte Carlo Coupe, $37.88. Or a 1971 Custom El Camino. Deal Writer priced at only $33.56. Don't buy a new car anywhere until you get a Deal Writers deal from Harry May Chevrolet. And don't buy a used car anywhere until you check out the fantastic lot-wide used car sale at Harry May Chevrolet. Chevys, Cadillacs, Chryslers, Buicks, Fords, Plymouths, even Dune buggies, all priced to sell and sell now. Don't miss it. The spectacular Deal Writer demo sale and lot-wide OK used car sale at Harry May Chevrolet Cadillac Incorporated. 15180 South Monroe in Monroe. Easily accessible by I-75. You talk about your funky music, baby. Solid Gold on CKLW. Bobby Parker, barefoot and Sikkim.
Everybody get on your feet. Don't have no shoes on.
Oh, sorry. 1966. That's Solid Gold on CKLW. Robert Parker, barefooting at 2:15 Daylight Time, 1:15 in Detroit with Big Tom Rivers cooking.
If you're part of the 21 and up crowd, remember Wednesdays and the Chicken and Suds special for one low price. It's the best yet.
If you're part of the 21 and up crowd, the Wednesday night place to be is Jerry Sheena's famous Upper Deck at the Rooster Tail. Upper Deck and Lower Deck for dancing. 2 bands for 21 and over.
CKLW weather.
Fair and cool overnight. It's going to be mostly sunny and warmer later on today. Low this morning of around 52 and the high later today of around 85. For Monday, sunny and pleasant. Cleveland reports 60. Toledo at 62. Currently 61 degrees at CKLW.
Spring of 1972 saw the arrival of 2 talents who were to become institutions at CKLW, Ted Richards and Bill Gable. Gable departed in 1980, and Ted Richards, celebrating a decade at CK, remains today doing the 6 to 10 p.m. show. Ted's a clever, entertaining disc jockey who has a good time on the air, letting it rub off on his listeners. Ted joined CKLW from the famous WAPE in Jacksonville. And when he arrived, the lineup read Frank Brody mornings, Dave Schaefer 9 to noon, Pat Holliday noon to 3, Jim Jackson on PM Drive, Hal Martin 9 to midnight, Johnny Williams all nights and Hank O'Neill on weekends. Ted fit nicely into the 6 to 9 p.m. slot.
10 o'clock at CKLW, the Motor City's music station, with Teddy the Truckin' Bear Richards and April Wine. Come on. CKLW, Ted Richards in a Motown with a hometown band. Hallelujah. Yeah, April Wine opened the thing. Get ready for a little love at 10:07. All right.
Wrigley Spearmint Gum says hello. Wrigley Spearmint Gum, we all like the way it says hello.
Jeez. This man is frustrated and disappointed. You can't blame him. He just tried to buy a pair of tickets to one of Neil Diamond's sold-out Pine Knob concerts. Somebody should tell him to listen to CKLW. Neil Diamond Star Passes are being given away all this weekend. The right caller to the music lines each hour goes to the music with a friend. Don't you miss out. Neil Diamond Star Passes are being given away all this weekend on CKLW.
CKLW, Ted Richards, your magic man in the Motor City. It's 10:11. Hey, a one-time only sneaky preview of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and a splendid time is guaranteed for everybody. Tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. at the Town Theater. See superstars Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees. Also Steve Martin, George Burns, Billy Preston, Aerosmith, and Earth, Wind, and Fire. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from Universal Pictures, produced by Robert Stigwood. Written by Henry Edwards, directed by Michael Schultz. Rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. at the Town Theater. The Bear told you so.
Hello, sunshine. How do you do?
CKLW. Hey, my music lines are open right now. Let's get together with a little boss rap at 298-6080 in Detroit and 966-4000 in Windsor. I told you so. CKLW from the Last Waltz. The band, everybody. CKLW, your bear. Hey, Ted Richards in the Motor City with Willie G. Smith in the hay. Sweetie pie.
Come on and take yourself away to a place that's fun at Cedar Point.
Chart Tours announces the Cedar Point Express. Monday and Wednesday, early morning express service to Cedar Point. Chart Tours and park admission tickets are both available at most area Sears stores. Hey, gotta play one for Big John. He likes Dan Hill on the 8. CKLW. Sometimes when we touch. Dan Hill on the 8. CKLW. Enjoy yourself this summer with the Pine Knob Concert Series. Call the CKLW Concert Line anytime. In Detroit, 358-5940. In Windsor, 258-7547.
Whether you're planning to get away with friends
on Warner Brothers Records and Tapes.
Available at the Music Stop. CKLW. All right. Baron Longfellow, Harlem.
Bill Gable also arrived in 1972 to do late evenings, arriving from WHBQ in Memphis. Following a brief sojourn to L.A. to tack the letters KHJ on his resume, it was Bill Gable who narrated the Aircheck Factory's tribute to KHJ, by the way. By 1973, he was not only back at CKLW, but that year saw Bill Gable win the Billboard Award for Best Personality.
This is station CKLW. I should know. My name's Brother Bill. I'm a jock. I work the afternoon shift out of the Motor City. At 1 p.m. Monday, December 23rd, 1974, I got a call from a lady who said she was bored. 1:05 p.m. I responded to the call by playing Alvin and the Chipmunks' rendition of Delta Dawn. 2:10 p.m. The lady called back and stated the Blas were still in her home. 2:23. I checked with my superior, Willie the Pooh, who had just returned from walking his rats. He said, "Why don't you hit her with a 207 or section 106 of the Jingle Code?" I said, How's that? He said, right. I looked at him. He looked at me. I said, got it. He said, you mean? I said, check. I zipped the lonely chick with Fabian's, turned me loose. No results. Finally, I warmed up my right turntable to 33 1/3 and blew the old broad's face off with Grand Funk Railroad. Case closed.
The epilogue in a moment. At exactly 2 p.m. Christmas Day, 1974, Mean, Clean Brother Bill was taken before a live microphone and asked to present his program. And now the results.
Where I was born.
Aircheck Factory Toronto correspondent Michael Scott talked with Bill Gable just prior to Bill leaving for his current post as PM driver at WLW in Cincinnati. Bill recalls the lineup when he arrived.
Frank Brody was the morning guy. Frank is, whose real name is Mike Marshall, is now at CJCL here in Toronto. Middays, Johnny Williams, Pat Holliday. Afternoons, Eddie Rogers. Early evenings, Ted Richards. I first came to the station to do 9 to midnight. The all-night guy was Mike Kelly. And I came to CKLW from WHBQ in Memphis, where I was hired to do noon to 3 back in '71. I was there about a year before moving to CK.
When you're in small and medium markets, usually you have certain stations which are legends, I suppose, and the ones which you really aspire to be at. Was CKLW one of those?
Yeah, CK was definitely a station that I'd always wanted to be at. When I was in high school, in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which is a small town about a half hour out of Philadelphia, CKLW was one of the stations that came in at night very strongly, as did WABC and WKBW and WLS and WCFL. And at night, that was pretty much, this is of course before the impact of FM radio really came into being, and AM was the name of the game. So at night, the kids where I went to high school were into WIBG, and this is pre-WFIL, by the way, back in the early 60s, 64, 65. That's when FIL first came on the scene in 65. So WIBG was still the king through most of my junior high and high school years. So we were into WIBG, and then at night we'd punch around just like people do today, and I'd punch into CK and LS and the others that I mentioned. And so it was almost a dream come true.
Brother Bill Gable, whack CKLW.
Okay, you're a winner. What's your name?
Denise.
Denise who?
Wallace.
Where you from, Denise?
Sterling Heights.
Okay, you're the right caller with a phrase that pays, and you can have fun in the sun this summer with your pairs of passes to Pablo, okay?
Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay.
The folks at the Stroh Brewery, Detroit, Michigan.
Not available in Ontario. Motor City weather sunny and beautiful today with a high around 85. Fair and warm tonight, low around 68. I'm really enjoying this. Cleveland 86, Toledo 83, Detroit 83, 28 Celsius at CKLW.
How you doing out there?
CKLW, Teddy Bear with the most music in the Motor City tonight at 6. It's 3:28 Farmer Jack savings time. Time to save on Quaker-made ice cream, a half gallon, only 97 cents at Farmer Jack.
CKLW.
Tony Camillo's Bazooka Dynamite. CKLW. The longer you listen, the more you can win. 332 with Brother Bill at the Big 8.
I've been cheated.
How fast can you get to Detroit, Linda? CKLW setting you up for fun in the sun with pairs of passes to Bob Lowe at any moment. It's 334 with a brother.
If I fell in love with you.
CKLW, I couldn't stand the pain if I fell in love with you because you have weird habits, baby. That's the Beatles with Brother. It's 337 now. Have a bird.
Have a choice for a change.
Yours from your friends at CKLW.
Take me on.
CKLW, baby, please rock me for a little while. That's Charity Brown. This is Brother Bill in the Motor City. It's 341.
With your girl, Coney Island Beach, Coca-Cola. CKLW.
Summertime is here, and the time is right for dancing in the street, baby. Lincoln Park and Harborwood, here's your request. Monster Reeves and the Vandellas. your chance to ride on all day at Pablo Amusement Park happens again in minutes. It's 3:47 with Brother Bill.
Right now, you can get a...
One for the money. Brother Bill Cable, CKLW.
CKLW is something new from Wednesday. That's the disc jockey theme song, Here Today and Gone Tomorrow, or maybe Gone Tonight. It's 3:51 with Brother.
There's always got to be. That was Lobo for the Stroh Brewery Company, Detroit, Michigan. Family brewers for 200 years.
Not available in Ontario. Motor City weather, sunshine and lovely today with a high around 85. Fair and warm tonight, low 68. Cleveland 86, Toledo 83, Detroit 83, 28 Celsius at CKLW. CKLW, I smell so strong. Alice Cooper. That's hello, hooray. It's 3:55 in the Motor City. This is Brother Bill Cable. Get yourself a new ride, baby.
Now you can buy a 1975 Ford Pinto two-door.
Watch your Ford dealer.
This is Bill Gable asking you to be a friend to a child with MD. Young men 16 years and older can volunteer for a week at Muscular Dystrophy Camp by calling 399-8805.
CKLW.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, it's me. Hey, what the hell's going on in here? Come on, girl, say something. Talk to me. Don't give me none of that noise about your long-lost cousin. I don't want to hear that. Now, look, baby, before I get down to bare knuckles and brass tacks, I want you to ask a few questions for me. Number one, what are you up to? Number two, what is this dude's name? And number three, most importantly...
Promotions, of course, were always a part of CKLW's formula behind the Big 8 success story.
I think the most successful promotion we had happened during the best rating we had during my tenure there. We pulled, I think it was a 6-2 share in the Winter ARB, and the main promotion was the Joke of the Day contest. That was the second rating book with Purton, and we had gone from about a 3.5 share to about a 5.5 share in the first book with Dick, and then up to a 6-2, which was good for second place in the market, just behind WJR. We were number one, 18-34, and number two, 18-49, so we're very happy with that. And the promotion, on-air promotion that ran at that time was the Joke of the Day contest, which tied in with Dick Purton's TV spot, which was an animated spot promoting the humor of the Dick Purton show. Basically, that was the gist of it. And the Joke of the Day contest was each hour we would invite listeners to phone in with what they felt was a good joke, and we had people on the telephone screening the calls because it's a lot of work for the jock to handle that many lines, and the ones that the screening people felt were good, they'd put through to the jock, and we'd tape them, and then we'd play them back a quarter hour later, and then the best joke of the day would be played back in the afternoon between 5 and 6 in my last quarter hour, 5:45 to 6 o'clock. And so the object was to recycle audience from Dick's show into the afternoon show and across the day. And we didn't do it at night because we were still operating off of a fairly healthy teen base at that point at night. And we felt that perhaps that promotion wouldn't fit quite as well in the evening, and therefore we wrapped it up at 6 o'clock. But also that served the purpose well because of the recycling aspect. And then the night jocks would promote the contest for the following morning. And we had an enormous response to it. The best joke of the day got cash, and we had some other prizes of comedy albums and things like that. And the best joke of the new year, which was drawn at the end of the rating book, which was the best joke of all the jokes that went on the air, got a all-expense-paid trip for two to the Hawaiian Islands with all kinds of benefits and stuff, so you get a few laughs on winter, I guess, was the plug line, because Detroit was having a pretty severe winter then, and we felt that that would be a good prize. And all in all, the response was really terrific, and seems to have paid off in that particular rating book.
Mike Marshall.
One of the first contests that they did when I got there, and I'd never done really organized, formatted contests before, was a thing called the CKLW Black Box. And we had this gigantic black box with a white question mark on the top and each side out on the big, huge front lawn at the radio station. And you could see it if you looked over from Detroit, because the radio station was right on the other side of the river in Windsor. And we had all kinds of people driving by, and we had a security guard, and we had guard dogs, German shepherds all over the place, and it was really some of the dirtiest one-liners I've ever heard in my life. Won a vet. We gave away a vet after we were told about KFRC giving away a, what's the big English car, the sports car? Anyway, XKE, is that it? Yeah. The first day that they had their contest on the air, the jock who was out driving it at the time rolled it on the freeway, and they had to go out and spend another 9 or 10 grand to replace the thing, so they'd have something to give away and had to start their contest all over again. We gave away his and hers Pontiac GTOs. You had to guess the combined weight of the jocks, and we all went down to some doctor's office and were officially weighed and signed affidavits. We signed affidavits for every contest that we were sworn to secrecy, would not even tell our wives or our girlfriends or anything like that. We did another contest called the CKLW Secret City. And at the time I was programming the radio station, and you had to guess where we played like about 10 or 15 seconds of the street noise, and you had to guess along with our clues where that city was, and if you were the lucky winner, you won a trip there for a week plus $500 spending cash for you and a friend or your wife or whatever. And so I thought to myself, well, where are we going to go? We can't make it someplace obvious like Honolulu or any of these places, Paris, or they're going to knock us off in the first day and a half. So I thought Santiago, Chile. Went down to the library. I thought, I'm going to go somewhere in South America. So I did a lot of reading on South America down at the Windsor Library, and they said that Chile was one of the strongest democracies, one of the most stable countries in all of South America. So I thought, that's it. Sounds kind of interesting as far as a place to go. It's far away. It's the kind of a thing that'll be kind of tough. 1.5 days into the contest, they had a military coup, and the rest is history down in Chile. But we managed to take the thing for a week and a half before we finally had a winner. Not like KFRC. They did a place down in New Zealand, and their sound effect was bubbling mud. This is the only place in the world where you will find bubbling mud. A lady knocked them off third hour of the contest, and they had to do it all over again with another city, and it cost them another I don't know what.
And as the jingle goes, the hits just kept on coming.
Guys who stand out in my mind would have to be guys like Chuck Browning, who was Chuck Morgan on the air. We both started about the same time. I think he started a day after I did, and he came in to replace Dave Schaefer on the morning show. Big Jim Edwards, of course. Very well-known programmer these last number of years. Good job. Tommy Shannon, probably the epitome of a great jock as far as I'm concerned. A guy who could say it all in 5 to 10 seconds. Just today, a fantastic jock, and still working in Detroit after coming back to CKLW for the second time around, and he's back over in Detroit now, as you probably are well aware. Ed Mitchell. Ed Mitchell did afternoon drive, left eventually when Paul Drew went down to KFRC after he left the second time around 1970. Ted Atkins had hired Ed from Mitchell. His real name is John Frick, and he went to KFRC and then on to KHJ with Ted Atkins and later with Paul Drew. His name down there was Mark Elliott. Now, I don't know what name he's using, but John Frick is he's got to be making about $500,000 a year doing promos for, it's either CBS or NBC, and he's doing all the movie spots, and he's making hand over fist money. And John, if you're listening, send money. Mark Richards was not there terribly long, but we ran into each other a little later at CFTR. Jim Felton is his real name, and Jim Brady on the air here in Toronto for, 8 years now? Just done tremendous things, and now that I'm over at Metro 1430, all of a sudden Jim Brady is coming over here, and he's going to program as well. So we get to work together again.
Look here, hit bomb for the Supremes, Diana Ross and Company. Some things you never, ever get used to. 1024 at CKLW with Mark Richards.
At the Dodge Boys, the figures do the talking.
Your
440. Dodge Coronet 440, the car that's awfully big for its price.
Tell me more.
$119. Coronet's price, $119 below Chevrolet Bel Air, based on manufacturer's suggested retail prices for standard four-door sedans.
It figures.
30, up to 30 more V8 horsepower than the competition.
Don't stop now.
Let the figures do the talking. 440, Coronet 440, the car that's awfully big for its price.
Today I buy my Coronet.
The figures do the talking. Now, at the Dodge Boys.
Ask your baby's doctor about Dapper Diaper. It controls diaper problems. Certified by the Federal Food and Drug Administration. Get Dapper Diaper.
CKLW, Golden Line.
Ladies and gentlemen, the beat goes on.
CKLW, the Motor City.
It's 10:29 at the Big 8. This is Mark Richard.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Rogers.
CKLW, Motor City Rock.
Eddie Rogers arrived at CKLW from WEAM in Washington, D.C. to replace Jim Jackson, who left for Ottawa's CFGO, where he became PD. He remained until 1973 doing PM Drive.
Big 8, CKLW, with Eddie Rogers on another sticky day in Motown. And when you know somebody ripped off the air conditioner out of my bedroom last night, which is up on the second floor. So I'll tell you, if you see a really tall dude with a hernia, you let me know.
She was black.
CKLW at 307. Eddie Rogers and Brother Louie with a sweet tooth but a brown sugar.
Hello, radio friends. If your bank doesn't have it, no wonder they aren't talking.
Here's great news for people in the Sarnia, Port Huron area. Pants Galore has just opened up store number 15 in Port Huron, and they're celebrating with a big $2 sale. Don't miss it.
CKLW.
What we're going to do right here is go back.
CKLW, 72 solid gold, Jimmy Castor Bunch, and chocolate ice, and Burger Buds. Your big woman, 312 with Eddie Rogers.
Acne pimples are a real problem. You should try proper pH. It will really help you.
Young legs, neat legs are young legs. CKLW.
Headlines are open for your request right now at CKLW 258-6666 in Windsor, 298-8822 in nitty-gritty Detroit City. Ann Murray.
Hey, I'd like to have a song to sing.
CKLW with Ann Murray. 315 with Eddie Rogers. She says, what about me? Look for Pepsi-Cola vending machine, and you'll find the happiest tasting cola. Ice cold. When you have too much going to stop, a Pepsi-Cola vending machine is around to help give you the kind of drive that keeps you going. Pepsi, it's got a lot to give, and you've got a lot to live. Want your preschooler to get into the music scene? Then bring your child to St. Clair College in Windsor, Saturday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. to register for the music workshop. Motor City weather, thunder showers this afternoon, high 84. Showers tonight, low 61. Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of more rain at a high of 74. Cleveland has 83 degrees, in Toledo 73, and in the Motor City currently 80 degrees.
CKLW. Eddie is now known as Ken Rogers and is program director at WYYS in Cincinnati. That CKLW was then and still is a great place to work can be attested to by the longevity achieved by some of its personalities in the high-pressure, volatile world of pop rock radio. Johnny Williams first worked for CKLW in 1968, but left for upstate New York and WYSL in Buffalo. By June 1971, he had returned to the fold, having discovered where the grass is the greenest. On June 2nd, 1981, Johnny Williams celebrated his 10th anniversary with CKLW, complete with champagne.
CKLW. Dan Hill and sometimes runs Okay, okay, I'm settled down now. Hi there, okay.
You folks out there won't know that this is Johnny Williams' 10th anniversary at CKLW, and a bunch of the boys have got...
Thank you, gang. Thank you, gang.
10 years allowed. 10 years. I don't know how you did it, John. We have a little token.
Wait a minute. Did you squash that with your own feet?
That's
Jack.
right. And there's 8 more where that came from downstairs. And you're going to hang around here.
Yeah, okay. That's great.
I would pop this.
Hey, that's really nice,
all over the controls.
That's swell. Do I have to get my check back now or what?
Very well done. The bad news is there's a pink slip taped to the bottom of the cake.
I didn't say anything because, you know, like I'm new on the air and they're going, 10 years?
On the air.
What the hell's he been doing for 10 years there?
Saturday night. Presented by the Ministry of Energy as part of Energy Ontario.
Hey, thank you for joining me today. And for the past 10 years, I was on for about 4 years. Then they took me off in the production room and put me back on again. Jack London is next. He's back from vacation. I just want to say this without getting mushy. The greatest radio station in the world. Without a doubt, CKLW. I feel privileged being here 10 years. I hope I have 10 more.